What is going on, everybody? Welcome into Player Profiler News Primetime. I'm Grindberg. I'm here with Jeremiah, my co-host for this brand new show. Let's hop right into the top stories for the day. So, Brandon Aiyuk wants a new contract and went public via TikTok in a video with college teammate and Commanders QB Jaden Daniels saying, "They don't want me back, man, I swear." What do you make of how things are going on in San Francisco there, Jeremiah? You think there's a storm a brewing, or is just Brandon Aiyuk trying to make a point to get his new contract?
Brandon Aiyuk is looking to play leverage. His leverage is going to be going public. The 49ers have their leverage to stay private. The 49ers don't gain anything by going public with Brandon Aiyuk, anything getting ugly here. Brandon Aiyuk is trying to utilize what leverage he does have. Brandon Aiyuk goes in the early second on Underdog. He's 16th in our wide receiver dynasty rankings. You can get his teammate Deebo Samuel a handful of picks later in round 2 on Underdog as well. Now, in step Ricky Pearsall. He's the contingent value who's there in round 12 in your best ball drafts. Expect dynasty gamers to test Ricky Pearsall and try and put him on the block. I personally would wait to sell Ricky Pearsall until Pearsall realizes his contingent value played out. Pearsall, to me, is a hold in dynasty. Now let's rattle off Brandon Aiyuk, number 2 in yards per target last year with 12.8, and number 2 in yards per reception with 17.9. He's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Brandon Aiyuk is an absolute baller. You have front burner, back burner issues. You know that from working in a kitchen. You have issues that rise and things that percolate and go back. Well, Brandon Aiyuk, to the 49ers, putting it on the back burner, Brandon Aiyuk is going to continue to bring this to the front burner and expect this to just keep coming back up in the news. Brandon Aiyuk will circle back until this is resolved. Now, Mike, I got a question about Javonte Williams. There's some beat writers talking about the possibility of Javonte Williams being cut. I believe it was Cecil Lammey talking about Jaleel McLaughlin being the lead back in Denver. Mike, what do you make of this Denver backfield?
Well, I mean, you got to consider Javonte Williams' injury history, and if you're talking to Cecil Lammey, he's a football guy, but he's an insider for the Broncos, and he was one of the first people last year on Jaleel McLaughlin, so he's got a lot of pull and see, and he sees it in the front line. Considering Javonte Williams' fantasy roster in 2024, it will have his ups and downs. Despite his early potential, he struggled to return to his best form last year after that major injury. He faced efficiency issues, concerns about his ability to regain dominance. While there's hope he could bounce back, factors like competition, like you mentioned about Jaleel McLaughlin, uncertainties in Denver's offense also add risks. His recovery from his knee injury has tempered expectations. His stats in 2023, especially yards per carry and fantasy points, fell short. While his history suggests he could improve, there's still significant gamble in drafting him, and this backfield in general for the Broncos can be wide open. They invested some draft capital in Audric Estime, and he's a guy that could be their future 1-2 punch with a guy like Jaleel McLaughlin if they do decide to move on from Javonte Williams. So he'd be a guy like Audric Estime I'd be looking at picking up in dynasty leagues. But let's get on to this Jaleel McLaughlin, like you mentioned. He is set to be a sleeper, in my opinion, in 2024. He's backed by great stats, a growing role in this Denver Broncos offense, despite being drafted outside of the top 45 running backs at the ADP of 46. McLaughlin has made an immediate impact in his rookie year. He showed impressive efficiency. He ranked 6th in manufactured touch per He's sharp. He's very good against the run. And Sean Payton's praise for him as a versatile playmaker. It echoes his past stars like Reggie Bush and Alvin Kamara. McLaughlin's rookie season validated his hype, and I think he's just going to be a guy that you're going to have to really keep your eye on in this preseason. Another guy that is, like I mentioned earlier, is Audric Estimate. Despite a slower 40 time, he brings impressive efficiency and versatility to the Broncos. With a dominant performance at Notre Dame, he showcased great running skills. He scored 18 touchdowns, ran for over 1,300 yards. His yards after contact and explosive metrics are highlight his potential and could be a future workhorse back if he can seize an opportunity, especially with Javonte Williams being on the cusp of maybe being cut, like you mentioned. So a lot of opportunity here for these Denver Broncos, and there's a lot of uncertainty. What do you take on the backfield? Do you think it's up for grabs, or do you think Javonte Williams is the clear-cut number one there, and this is all just smoke?
I think you can just tell a lovely story where the coaching staff doesn't necessarily love Javonte Williams. You have Samaj P. Ryan, who could get cut later in the offseason. Audric Estime, it is estimated that he is going to be out for some time with an injury. So then you're talking about two UDFAs in Jaleel McLaughlin and Blake Watson. So the story is there, the opportunity. You had that high praise from Sean Payton. So you have the incumbent UDFA and Jaleel McLaughlin. And then you have Blake Watson. I am high on some Jaleel McLaughlin. So I really like Jaleel McLaughlin in this backfield.
Yeah, I love him too. And his metrics are just really, the missed tackles force per rush is incredible. His metrics are all there. And he's a guy that you got to keep your eye on. And it doesn't matter who's going to be like the lead back, because he's just going to have a role. He's very good in the passing game, and he's going to find himself there. So folks, get on him if you can. Now, another guy that people are going to be keeping their eye on as well, and he's going to be joining a backfield that is an incumbent star out of that backfield, and that Kyren Williams. But Blake Corum, is he just a solid backup, or do you think he's going to carve himself out a role in this Rams offense? Because Sean McVay is given a little bit of praise for his rookie running back as of late, and we know Sean McVay, if he likes a running back, he likes to run with them. I'm hearing that it could be just more of a backup role. They don't want to miss a step if Kyren Williams is off the field with a breather, or if he doesn't get up injured. They want somebody that could step right in. But what's your take on this?
So Kyren Williams was number 3 in rushing yards last year with 1,144, and second in fantasy points per game at the running back position with 21.3. Remember, Kyren Williams had missed some time last year. Now that could be an inroad to Blake Corum getting opportunity this year, but this just won't go away because we love Blake Corum. I love Blake Corum. I have high exposure to him. I love his cost, both in best ball and in dynasty. But right now, Blake Corum is contingent value at this point. It's easy to get mixed up in the hopium that is Blake Corum. But shy of an injury, this job belongs to Kyren Williams. I want Blake Corum to be something as much as anybody else. And the price is so palatable. He would be, Blake Corum, a league winner in the Rams offense. But make no mistake, we are in the if status. So right now, you got to give respect to Kyren Williams. Mike, question for you. Trevor Lawrence has a new contract. What does it mean for the Jags in the offensive outlook in 2024? They've got Evan Ingram there, Calvin Ridley. They brought in Brian Thomas Jr. What do you like about the Jacksonville Jaguars now with Trevor Lawrence securing the bag?
I love this for Trevor Lawrence, and he's one of my guys that I want you to go out and get in fantasy football in 2024. He just isn't another quarterback option. He's actually a game changer, and your team needs him. Despite facing challenges, Lawrence's journey is headed in the right direction. Just look at his performance in the latter half of 2023, where he exploded for an average of 270 passing yards and 1.7 touchdowns per game. And now they've added a top receiver in Brian Thomas and another one in Gabe Davis. They're joining the mix. Those guys are burners on the outside, and Lawrence is set to have a pretty epic year. Don't let this past setbacks fool you. His rising star is undeniable potential compared to other elite quarterbacks like your Patrick Mahomes. He's just right on their heels. He averaged just 1.1 fewer fantasy points last season with that revamped Jags offense. He has talent like Gabe Davis now in the mix with, like I said, Brian Thomas. You got burners on the outside. You got a couple of target hogs on the inside like Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk. Then you have Travis Etienne and Tank Bisbee. Defenses aren't going to stand a chance. They're serious about securing a late round quarterback. I think Trevor Lawrence is your guy. He was not removed from a top 10 finish 2 years ago. He's just being added to some potential there. They gave him the bag. I love this situation here for Trevor Lawrence. I think he's got a lot of sleeper potential in 2024. And at cost, I love it.
Very nice. And also, my main memory of the Jaguars and something that I've seen across X is so many balls being dropped in the red zone, particularly with Calvin Ridley. So, to your point, Trevor Lawrence, there's a lot there, a lot of meat that has been left on the bone. And like you say and speak to, Gabe Davis in there, bringing in Brian Thomas Jr., there's some hype there, and you're getting support. I've heard people talk about Trevor Lawrence is living up to and living off of the Clemson name. But right now, for the market, you have to understand the price of your goods at the grocery store have gone up. That's inflation. Well, the NFL has a higher salary cap. They brought in more revenue. So just understand when Trevor Lawrence gets this bag, this is just relative to as well. There's going to be a significant rise. So don't be thrown off by the amount of money. Just know that the quarterback market will continue to push and elevate up. But I'm with you there. I'm bullish on the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2024.
Another situation that needs some attention here, Jeremiah, and that's the one that I'm talking about. And it's another guy that is looking for a contract who doesn't have one yet. And that's Alvin Kamara. He's asking for one. What do you make of this, my friend?
Alvin Kamara currently going round 6 on underdog. Kendre Miller, the contingent value, is going in round 12. The wide zone scheme fit will benefit both backs. I've heard Nick Underhill talk about the benefit for Kendre Miller there. Usually the Saints are able to keep things internal. This could be a signal that all is not right. If Kamara were to get traded or cut, there's a possibility you could have Kamara and Kendre be RB1s in fantasy once they split off. So I would say this would be a good pocket while you're drafting teams on best ball. Okay, because we may not make it to redraft season before this gets resolved. This is a good pocket to draft both Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller on your best ball squads with the hopes of splitting off 2 running back ones in the event that Alvin Kamara is out in New Orleans. Now, to that point, it's fiction until it happens, right? The Saints did move some of Taysom Hill's money the very day Kamara left the Saints facilities. This could be resolved in short order. My curiosity, I do wonder if CMC getting his deal reworked has prompted Kamara to want to advocate for himself and thus also helping push the running back market overall. We may have CMC up here. We may have Alvin Kamara in a further tier down, but how the players look at it, they're going to want to secure and get their bag. And you have to remember last year, Alvin Kamara, for us fantasy gamers, he lived up to that PPR scam that we joke about. He was such a good cheat code for your PPR leagues. Mike, what do you make of Alvin Kamara?
I think that situation is one to always keep an eye on. I mean, Alvin Kamara, as long as he's a dump off king, I think he's going to be somebody that you're going to be using all the time. Derek Carr is known to use the dump off quite a bit, and he's still accustomed to that offense. So until something changes, I'm still with you. I like the cost on all those, on both those guys in best ball and in redraft leagues. Kendre Miller is a guy that was steaming up draft boards last year in the rookie. Like he was touted as a top 5 pick last year and then ended up with the Saints and then fleeted off. He started the year with an injury and people thought that he would have that steam because Kamara was suspended to start the year, and it just never ended up panning out, and people kind of fell off and forgot about Kendre Miller as a whole. But we got to remember he was a guy that people were steaming up the draft boards last year. So a guy to keep an eye on. He's a young running back that has a lot of tread on his tires still, and could carve out a role right away here. And I wouldn't be surprised if both of them coexist in that Saints lineup. So I like that call, Jeremiah, a lot. Now I got a call that. Oh wait, hold on. Oh, it's the Podfather. The Podfather is calling, and he wants to tell some people about the FFPC and their spring promo. So let's hear about him right now.
Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early best ball leagues that start in February and dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest and bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it!
Now, Mike, we've talked about front burner, back burner, priorities. Go over to the Cincinnati Bengals. T. Higgins signs the franchise tag. What does this mean for T. Higgins? And then what might be some of your outlook on Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals?
Well, I just think this is a good situation in general for the Bengals and Joe Burrow. We know that maybe T. Higgins isn't going to be there long term. This is probably just a Band-Aid on the situation. He could be on the move depending on how the Bengals start the season. They have a lot of eggs in this basket right now. They're going to have to pay these guys in the future. You know that Jamar Chase is looking for a new contract. So this resolving of his contract situation for T. Higgins, it brings a stability to the receiving core in 2024. After a tumultuous offseason with trade rumors, Higgins agreed to sign that franchise tag tender, committing to the team for just another year. While that long-term deal isn't likely before July 15th, Higgins' return ensures the continuity of the Bengals passing game alongside quarterback Joe Burrow. In 2023, Higgins faced challenges with injuries, resulting in career lows in receptions, targets, yards, and touchdowns. But despite these setbacks, he maintained a strong 15.6 yards per reception average and commanded a 37% of the team's air yards when healthy, highlighting his impact downfield. His ability to stretch defenses remains crucial for the Bengals, especially with Tyler Boyd gone and the potential issues with the Jamar Chase's contract. But for Joe Burrow, Higgins provides a familiar and dependable target, complementing Chase's playmaking ability. Burrow's health is a concern after injuries in 2023, but he showed flashes of his elite production late in the season, especially in the midseason. As fantasy managers prepare in 2024, Higgins and Burrow offer upside in a pass-happy offense. Despite Higgins' recent struggles, his youth, past success hint at a potential rebound season, and look for that whole offense as a whole being a good bounce back. They got a couple running backs that have a lot of question marks, and that's a running back situation room that has been a hot topic in a lot of fantasy circles. Who's going to get the bulk of those workload? Is it going to be Zach Moss? Is it going to be Chase Brown? And they got a young rising star wide receiver too in Jermaine Burton that I think was a kind of an insurance policy and a future star in that situation if Higgins does prove to move on. I love that. I love that situation. I like that move for the Bengals, getting T. Higgins to sign that. And what about you here? What about Bijan Robinson? He is expecting a larger role, similar to Christian McCaffrey. I know I would love to see that. I'm sure fantasy managers would love to see a couple of those guys hit that ceiling like a Bijan, Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs are all kind of being floated around in the top 4 with Christian McCaffrey there. Is it possible? Do you think Raheem Morris wants to get Bijan the ball as much as possible, Jeremiah?
My hot take, Bijan is the 101 next year, and he's the first running back taken off the board. There is alignment in Atlanta. Bijan, the player, is saying it, and so is head coach Raheem Morris. This is a huge buffer from the disconnect that was Arthur Smith and the Falcons' offensive players last season. You're hearing good things from Kyle Pitts. You're hearing good things from Drake London. Everything that Bijan says, and this is publicly as well, Bijan Robinson is talking about having the CMC role similar to what they do in San Francisco. So you have Bijan saying this publicly. You have Bijan's head coach, Raheem Morris, having his back and talking about getting him the rock, getting Bijan Robinson the rock as much as possible. Now, Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson were closer than you would have liked to have seen in the carry department. Tyler Algier may not go away entirely, but what I think will happen is early downs, you will get Bijan toting the rock between the tackles, and then he will be utilized in those passing situations. You may see both Algier and Bijan on the field, but in high leverage situations, you are going to have Bijan Robinson out there, and he's really, long and short, Bijan Robinson is not going to come off of the football field. And that's a huge plus for us as fantasy gamers. Now, Mike, pivoting over to the Commanders, signing Jaden Daniels, getting things set up, a change of the command, a changing of the guard. What's your outlook on Jaden Daniels? Does Terry McLaurin have his quarterback that's going to bring him to the promised land as a fantasy player? And then, of course, Luke McCaffrey. If you want to throw in a wrinkle of Brandon Aiyuk's speculation, just let us know. What do you think?
I think there's a lot of speculation there, and I think that's hearsay. I think they're probing it. I don't think Aiyuk is going to be elsewhere in 2024, but that's just my take on that. I love Jaden Daniels, though, headed into this season. I think he's a must-have in 2024. There is mixed opinions following his selection as a 2024 second overall pick by the Commanders, but here's why he's my standout choice. The dual threat capabilities, he showed that prowess in college. He even threw for 3,800 yards and rushed for 1,250, 50 total touchdowns in his final season at LSU. That's incredible. He's historical success since 2014. Quarterbacks who's rushed over 1,000 yards in college, started at least 16 games in the first two NFL seasons, averaged 20 fantasy points per game, and finished as a QB1 or better 64% of the time. Incredible. That could be the next Lamar Jackson here. Impact immediate. He's expected to start day one under offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury in an up-tempo system with strong RPO elements. Daniels is set up to maximize his dual threat abilities right away. This makes him a valuable asset in fantasy leagues, especially to those that reward rushing yards and touchdowns. The fantasy potential is unmatched. He is projected to be a low-end QB1, but his significant upside, his ability to rack up yards and scores both through the air and on the ground, give him a very high ceiling, particularly in formats like two quarterback superflex leagues where dual threat quarterbacks are highly sought after. His supporting cast is great. It's up there with some of the better ones that rookie quarterbacks get. His supporting cast with Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. These are both first-round selections. Then you add a guy like Luke McCaffrey, like you mentioned, a rookie that has the pedigree from the McCaffrey family. He has the potential there to really make a big difference. The value is there for him. He's a pre-draft ranking ADP gem. He's being drafted and redrafted as the quarterback 6 dean, and he could be top 5 if everything goes to plan here with that supporting cast. I really like a resurgent year from Terry McLaurin since he burst onto the NFL scene in 2019. He had a great rookie season, 58 receptions, 900 yards, 7 touchdowns. That was a rare feat, and he continued that. He's just consistent with any quarterback, and now he gets a quarterback that can actually get him the ball. He's entering his 6th season in the NFL, still got a lot of tread left on the tires, and he remains the Commanders' wide receiver 1 with a high target share and the potential for increased volume. Yes, increased volume. He is set to have a standout year, and I know a lot of guys within Player Profile have high expectations. I know Theo Grimminger is really, really high on Terry McLaurin. So am I. I think he's got proven consistency. He's primed for wide receiver 1 position, and the arrival of Jaden Daniels makes him must-have player for me in 2024. And another must-have player for me in 2024 is a rookie, and this rookie can be inserted into an offense right away, and an explosive offense potentially led by Justin Herbert. And that wide receiver that I'm talking about is Ladd McConkey. And what is your thoughts on Ladd McConkey in 2024, Jeremiah? What do you think is going to happen with him in the Chargers offense?
So here we have Ladd McConkey, 4.39, 40-yard dash, Georgia pedigree. We saw McConkey excel on the highest stage in college. This class is so deep, and there can be some fatigue where fantasy gamers want to backtrack away from seeing a bullish outlook for too many players. We can't have too many players go off, right? While not every receiver in this class will hit, we can still have this abundance mindset towards McConkey succeeding. People hear heavy run game, Greg Roman offense, and draft as if the Chargers will pass 0% of the time. There is fading, and then there is completely avoiding teams for fantasy and players in part. Part of the Ladd McConkey fade is due to the heavy Chargers passing game fade. You need to incorporate your clicks for round 6 on Underdog Best Ball. In Dynasty, if Ladd McConkey is on your squad, you just need to wait until he starts filling out the stat sheet, and then you will be able to trade as his value rises. Right now, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, they will generate the Godfather offers. Roma Dunze, maybe with the traffic there in Chicago, may not get a Godfather offer, but let's say it's those 3, right? Harrison, Neighbors, and Adunze. You're not going to get the Godfather offer for McConkey, so you should just be happy to have McConkey on your team, and then you can just keep buying, keep holding, and then when his value rises in season, because once it's in front of us, in front of your eyeballs, and you see it and it's real, then his value will take off. And then you'll have people lined up when you put Ladd McConkey on the trade block. Now, Mike, pivoting over to somebody a little bit older, all right, there was some talk about could he retire or not. Well, Travis Kelce put that to rest on Super Bowl night during the celebration. But Travis Kelce, locking it up, money's got to be real, right? Just ask Brandon Aiyuk. Travis Kelce signs a 2-year deal and has now committed to playing in 2024. And most likely beyond that. Talk to us, Mike, about the impact of Travis Kelce signing and where he sits in Dynasty.
I love this move for the Chiefs, and just Chiefs faithful. Chiefs Kingdom has been rejoicing ever since. They're still kind of on a hangover from their back-to-back Super Bowl victories, but they had a very busy offseason, and they signed and sealed and delivered some of their bigger name free agents. And they extended some guys like Travis Kelce. Now this deal reaffirms his pivotal role both for the team and for fantasy football. Yes, he's nearing 35 years old, but has consistently delivered elite performance despite his age. In the 2023 season, he narrowly missed his 8th consecutive 1,000-yard season, and he would have got it if they weren't keeping him fresh for that Week 18 game. Finishing with 93 receptions, 984 yards, 5 touchdowns in just 15 games. His reliability extends beyond the regular season. He evidenced by his standout postseason performance, 32 receptions, 355 yards, 3 touchdowns across 4 games as the Chiefs' all-time leader in receiving yards with 11,328, 75 touchdowns. His impact on the field is undeniable. His rapport with Patrick Mahomes is a cornerstone of that Chiefs offensive strategy, making him not only a crucial asset for the team, but also in fantasy football. His commitment to play beyond 2024 dismisses any retirement speculation, solidifying his position as a top-tier tight end in both redraft and dynasty leagues. Despite potential workload management with new additions to the tight end group, Kelce's skill set, experience, and competitive drive ensure he remains a consistent producer of big plays and top fantasy numbers. Fantasy managers, Kelce's extension, his ongoing productivity make him a reliable cornerstone to your team. His ability to perform at a high level in critical moments and proven track record as a perennial tight end one underscore his continued value in fantasy drafts. So prepare yourself for this upcoming season. His status remains secure as a top tight end option, offering both reliability and championship winning potential for fantasy owners. So that is our first segment of our first ever Player Profiler News Primetime show. How does it feel, Jeremiah, man?
Oh, it's awesome. It's been so much fun to work with Player Profiler. It was right about the turn of the new year when I got linked up with the writer's desk. And of course, I got to work with you, Mike. So it's been so cool to work with Brendan and Johnny, you, Bradley, and a host of other great writers and contributors to Player Profiler News. And the cool thing about our show is we're always going to have some topics that are percolating high up. And then, of course, we're going to have the coach's corner and, of course, your chef's table. So it's a unique thing for us where we have relevant topics that we would like to discuss. Then, of course, other fun topics as well. For me, was a coach. I taught PE. I now teach special education. I also sell insurance. It's as glamorous as it sounds. I love the game of fantasy football, and I feel like it brings people together so much. And I personally, my other podcasts, I have Best Ball Night School and Best Ball Study Hall, one with Destination Devi and one with Bradley with the FF Plus Network. So it's a whole lot of fun being here at Player Profiler. It's been enjoyable. I've joined entities where I listen and consume. So I think that's the biggest testament. You and myself, Mike, where we consume, we go and contribute. So why don't you introduce yourself some, Mike, to our audience?
Yeah, I mean, just like you, my friend, I have a similar path. I joined the news desk, and the news desk is a great new thing that the Player Profiler guys set up in this 2023 season, and it's fresh off the press, and literally fresh off the press is what we do for the news desk. Is we deliver the news as it happens, and it's all accumulated on the Player Profiler website, but it's also being reinforced with not only that, but we also contribute to the YouTube channel and also the TikTok and Instagram feeds as well. So when our stuff goes up, it goes up on that as well. So we have little shorts that we do to ensure that is top-notch stuff. So that's how we got in the door with Player Profiler. I also would do Player Profiler Today on the Wednesday slot for Player Profiler. So another thing that you're going to see on our channel that's starting to grow, it's a supportive channel of the main channel, the Player Profiler channel. So you're going to find the news, and it's going to explode because we got a couple new shows coming out, and we have news daily. So you're going to be on the up and up. And then I do a lot of fantasy football content through other channels as well. I have a dynasty show called the Dynasty Pulse that's aired on the Undroppables and the Fantasy Football Plus Network. And I have a co-host for that show, Brendan Booth, who's also a main contributor for the news desk. And then we also have a fantasy show that is a redraft show for the Fantasy Football Advice Network called the Fantasy Forecast. Biggs and I are a co-host for that as well. And I do a team-specific show for the Undroppables called the Chiefs Uncovered, and I also help them onboard new Uncovered team-specific content. So I'm a very busy guy in the fantasy space, but you can find my stuff at FFCanuck99 on Twitter. Jeremiah, where can you find all your stuff on Twitter?
You can find me at Coach Retzlaff1, and there's a lot of good content on there. And I like to give my feedback on some of my takes And of course, you grow through some of that. You're not going to hit every single one. Some of my favorite analysts have made some very public calls where it did not go right, but some of the best ones, they keep going, they endure, and they're persistent. So I love being part of the fantasy football community. One of the coolest things, and then I'll segue over to my coach's corner, is the fact that you meet people in the fantasy industry and they're just such good people, and it just lines up. So I've been very blessed to be able to meet people and align with people who socially, how they face the same way when the camera or the social media isn't out in front. So they're real genuine. So I love that. I'm going to pivot over to the Tennessee Titans. All right, let's spit a little bit of game here on them. Calvin Ridley, I have the underdog ADPs pulled up as a reference. Calvin Ridley goes in the 5th round. Last year, he was number 1 in route participation at 100%. He will not leave the field. 14th in targets. Calvin Ridley was number 3 in red zone targets with 25. Now, you saw a lot of different film of Trevor Lawrence launching the ball with the Jaguars and some of those being drops. But Calvin Ridley, we talk about talent, he draws targets. DeAndre Hopkins in the 6th round, number 2 in deep targets with 35, number 2 in air yards with 1905. You see a lot of film of Will Levis launching the ball. That's a common theme for the Tennessee Titans, and it will be even more prevalent in 2024 as they grow to support the throwing and passing game of Will Levis. Tony Pollard, round 9. This was interesting. He had 72 red zone touches, number 2 at the running back position. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the green zone and the red zone. Tajay Spears, all right, the Tony Pollard signing. I did say something good about Tony Pollard, but Tajay Spears, to me, the Tony Pollard signing is like finding a Costco in a desert. Tajay Spears' ADP would be through the roof. Instead, you can now get him in round 10. So to me, Tony Pollard is a distraction, and discerning fantasy gamers are gobbling up some Tajay Spears like Pac-Man at ADP. Tajay Spears was number 9 in running back receptions with 52, 5th in breakaway run rate at 7%, and for efficiency metrics that we have on Player Profiler, Spears was number 5 in yards created per touch with 4.58. The Titans signaled their pass game bullishness and investment in Will Levis by getting somebody like Tony Pollard to go along with Tajay Spears. So even from the run game, they are going to pass tremendously. Now, Will Levis is going in round 15. He is QB 24 off the board. I contend and believe Will Levis, another hot take, will be a top 10 quarterback next year. Chigo Okonkwo, round 16. No buzz on competition for him. He's just there. Tyler Boyd goes in round 17. Treylon Burks in 18. So with Will Levis, he turns 25 years old very soon. He was number 1 in air yards per pass attempt. You watch highlights of Levis and you just see him launching the football. The Titans are going to have a massive shift in philosophy, and fantasy gamers have not really let that set in yet. The volume with which the Titans will pass will take over any slumps Will Levis has. Levis has exponential growth. Again, that is a 180 ADP on Underdog. He is 21st in our dynasty QB rankings, behind Bryce Young, Jared Goff, JJ McCarthy. A note on Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is a sneaky signing which allows for more intermediate throws where Boyd will work out of the slot. This is an area that Will Levis can refine his game. The Titans are here supporting Levis. Ask Joe Burrow how nice it was to have Tyler Boyd as his third receiver. Now, Ridley, D-Hop, Boyd, all are 29 or older. This is an older core. The future is now. But in the event that the Titans don't thrive and Will Levis isn't the guy, the Titans can maneuver their offensive team building in another direction. The Titans are rumored to be interested in Dak Prescott in the event that the Cowboys don't lock him up. Now, granted, take a number, get in line, because there'll be plenty of teams who want Dak Prescott. To me, my hot take, the Titans have signaled their pass game bullishness by investing in Tyler Boyd, Calvin Ridley, even bringing in a passing game archetype running back in Tony Pollard. The hot take is Will Levis is a top 10 quarterback
Whoa!
2024.
What? Wow!
What
Boom!
do you
Mic
make of that?
drop. Wow, that's insane. It's crazy. That's a crazy thought. I mean, you must have been a Will Levis truther going into last year's draft. Did you think he was going to get drafted in the first round?
It's funny because Cody Carpentier was real high on him, and I believe calling Will Levis the #1 quarterback in the class. This is prior to CJ Stroud. It wasn't necessarily that I was high on Will Levis. It's just that it has so much occurred to me, just the mass upside from this vantage point of where you are acquiring and getting Will Levis in best ball and even in dynasty, to where the payoff could be massive. And it would just be like winning the lottery. It's a huge lotto ticket, but I actually can see the board shifting for Will Levis. A neat part for the Titans here, even though it's an older wide receiver build and things could shuffle out very quickly if it goes bad quickly. The nice thing about that is we are finding out right now in 2024 about Will Levis. It's not that Will Levis, and they're different archetype of players. It's not that Will Levis is Jalen Hurts, but you recall Jalen Hurts going into his first full season as a starter, got that buy-in from the Philly front office. They invested around him, got AJ Brown, and you saw how things took off for Jalen Hurts. I see things being able to take off for Will Levis, and at the very least, all these moves have signaled that the Titans, there's not going to be any kind of, well, what if this worked out? Wait until year 3. No, because if patience is going to run out on Will Levis for doing poorly, it won't be for a lack of not trying. And that's why I love me some Will Levis in 2024. Put it on the board. I like him as a top 10 quarterback in 2024. What do you think of that, Mike?
Well, I think that's I think that's a very, very bold statement. I like Will Levis in 2024. I think he's got a lot of potential. You look at a couple things here. He had 4 passing touchdowns against the Falcons. It highlighted his potential. There was, some lull in his production afterwards. They, showcased a commitment to him. He is young. They did add, Calvin Ridley, like you said. They did add a slot receiver in Tyler Boyd. These guys are old. So that's what concerns me beyond this. Okay. So maybe he has a decent year this year. But what happens after this year and these contracts are gone? You're losing those support guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley. Then you're left with a guy like Treylon Burks, who, yes, he's a first round draft capital guy. I think Will Levis is set up for a decent year. I see him being a top 15, cracking that range as competent enough. But there's a lot of quarterbacks right now that are steaming up the draft board, and I think that Will Levis is one of them. It's bold. I could see it happening because of that opportunity. And like you said, if you're going to roll your dice, you might as well go all in. And he's a guy that if you can hit on him, he could be a league winning potential for your team. So it's worth a shot in the later rounds. And if you can end up being a viable option for you, yeah, man, I don't see it. So
Yep.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Mike, I like that. And, maybe you're bringing me back down to reality, to the QB 15, but then I'm just sitting there. Hey, if Will Levis hits QB 15, based on where he's going in these best ball drafts at quarterback 24, that would still be not massive, but it would be at least a mass shift in value payoff. So I like that. That was the coach's corner. And now we have the chef's table. Mike has something cooking up. I'm going to pull up the underdog ADP for the Philadelphia Eagles while Mike cooks us up some Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about the ADP. I'm going to talk about the team as a whole. He's going to reference some ADP players here, and there's some tough ones here that I see off the bat, and we're going to talk initially about that offense coming together. Yes, they're going to be still a very potent offense in 2024, but I just seen a lot of red flags in 2023 and some additional moves this offseason that I just think we're going to see a little bit of a different look from this Eagles team in 2024. And here's why. It starts with Kellen Moore's arrival with the Eagles. He brings a new chapter to their offensive strategy. Last year, they had late struggles despite despite starting a strong 10-1 record, the Eagles faltered down the stretch under, Moore's counterpart, Brian Johnson. They managed only 19 points fewer in the 4 games. The late season collapse raises doubts about Moore's ability to sustain offensive momentum over a full season. The rivalry dynamics, Moore switched from Dallas to Philadelphia, intensifies this rivalry between the two teams. The move adds pressure for Moore and McCarthy down the line. So this is a very interesting move. Offensive philosophies clash. Moore's big play approach contrasts sharply with the traditional Eagles strategies. This shift could prove to unsettle players accustomed to a different kind of playbook style under Johnson, potentially disrupting the offensive cohesion and play calling consistency. Strategic disadvantages, the Cowboys and Moore's tendencies give them a bad matchup down the line. I've seen Kellen Moore in his past and what he's done to some quarterbacks, and I just don't see that happening any better for Jalen Hurts. You look what he did to Herbert. You look what he did to Dak Prescott, and before and after Kellen Moore's appearance and disappearance, those quarterbacks changed drastically. Herbert changed for the worse. He wasn't the same quarterback under Kellen Moore. And you look at Dak Prescott once Kellen Moore left, he was a quarterback. I think he ended up quarterback 3 last year. And that moves on to Jalen Hurts, who's lost a step, in my opinion, last year when he lost Shane Steichen. His fantasy performance in 2003, it did land him as the quarterback too. But initially that seems promising. But if you look deeper, those numbers raise considerate concerns to me for this upcoming season. First, the departure of Shane Steichen last year was severely understated. Since his departure, there's been concerning decrease in his passing efficiency, evident in his drop of passing yardage per game, passing yards per attempt, completion percentage, and touchdown rate, resulting in a notable decline in his passer rating. This downward trend suggests potential challenges in generating fantasy points, and that is a metric I'm going to be looking out for. He heavily relies on rushing touchdowns, and his production in 2023 was no exception to that rule. He had an alarming 24% of his fantasy points coming on the ground, and that heavily reliance raises red flags with the addition of Saquon Barkley that clouds his rushing upside. Bringing in an elite running back will surely take away some of Hurts' red zone and rushing looks. And Jason Kelce retiring, it lays doubt on how effective that tush push will be in 2024 without their key piece that design play revolved around. I can see Hurts losing maybe close to 5 touchdowns this year on the ground with the Kelce and Barkley factors. Jalen Hurts, he did rock 2023, but the road looks dicey for me since that Shane Steichen leaving. His passing game has gone down south. He banked heavily on rushing touchdowns, and I think Saquon Barkley coming in, that hinders. And then when we look at a guy like A.J. Brown, his 2023 seemed, to demonstrate his top-tier potential at wide receiver. But when you look at that ADP, what does that ADP say there, Jeremiah, for A.J. Brown?
A.J.
And if
Brown?
you can,
Yep,
yeah.
He goes 9 overall in the first round.
That's crazy to me. Okay. Especially when I talk about that efficiency rating, he had a lot of boom games last year. His late season struggles towards the end of the season, AJ Brown productions declined, notably being outscored by Devontae Smith after week 11. This late season dip coincided with the Eagles' overall decline, raising concerns about Brown's consistency and his performance under pressure. The quarterback dependence, Brown's success in 2023 was closely tied to Jalen Hurts' passing efficiency. However, Hurts' inconsistent play, including a regression in completion, like I mentioned in the earlier part, he had a career high 15 interceptions last year. It casts doubt on his ability to consistently feed Brown the ball effectively. The coaching changes, adds uncertainty. So these are all very volatile situations, especially when you look at a ADP of 9.7. That is really rich for my blood when you think about a guy that I would rather have some safer options at that play. Give me Amon-Ra St. Brown any day of the week over an AJ Brown. I'd love that consistent kind of production, and that's where they're going to be being drafted around. I'd even prefer Devontae Smith at ADP because it's a safer bet. Like I mentioned, week 11 on, he was the better pick there. And then, Saquon Barkley coming in, he's a pass catching threat as well. He can average, I can see him getting upwards of, 70 checkdowns this year and becoming a threat in between the 20s as a pass catching option there. So, Saquon Barkley, he has that workhorse role and production history. That offensive line, the supporting cast is very strong, even though they did lose Jason Kelce. His receiving potential under that new offensive coordinator is going to be a strong one. He has some upside at that draft position because of that touchdown upside there too. So I like Saquon Barkley this year. That also is a very strong ADP for him to be going at right now. So if you look at all those ADPs, I'm firmly off of all those guys based of all these tendencies and the arrival of Kellen Moore. I'm not a huge fan of him as an offensive coordinator and what it does to quarterbacks. So I'm out on the Eagles this year. I don't know about you there, Jeremiah. What are your thoughts on the Eagles?
Well, I like what you say about Jalen Hurts. A big issue that I had last year when they were toting the rock to DeAndre Swift, there wasn't so much of a pace in their play. And what I found, this happened in Denver with Russell Wilson as Russell Wilson got older. And I didn't expect this with Jalen Hurts. Russell Wilson wanted to veer away from being a rusher. He wanted to just stay back and pass in the pocket. Part of the benefit for Russell Wilson and Jalen Hurts, their game is keeping defenses off balance. Both quarterbacks can do both, where they can run and they can pass. This is not saying Jalen Hurts cannot pass, but part of Jalen Hurts' strength is keeping that triple threat option, the RPOs, right? Run, pass, or if it's not Barkley, he can tuck and run, or he still has that pass out there. You still needed those options. And also, earlier in the progression on a play, Jalen Hurts needs to take off more frequently, whether it's by design or impromptu. It needs to be earlier in the play because Jalen Hurts is not Lamar Jackson fast. Now, Lamar Jackson's speed, he's more 20 to 20, right? In the green zone, in the red zone, there's more design rushes for Jalen Hurts. I think between the 20s, Jalen Hurts needs to rush more aggressively and have more initiative in tucking and running, and that'll help keep defenses off balance. Now, did Jalen Hurts have an injury last year that he was hiding? Maybe it was a shoulder, something, lower body. I don't know. Only he may know, and maybe somebody internally at Philadelphia. But to your point, they need to push tempo. And when you see AJ Brown, I really do like Devonta Smith compared to AJ Brown at the ADP that you get Devonta Smith. It sounds sacrilegious right now or blasphemy, but it could easily flip in any given year where Devonta Smith outperforms AJ Brown. It just hasn't happened yet, but you got to consider those costs. So there's a little bit of a bias towards, hey, you're the second receiver, but Devonta Smith is an alpha compared to so many other teams, number one wide receiver. So we could really see some value payoff for Devonta Smith. I like the alternate take that you get about Jalen Hurts. We're not so sure what's going to happen in 2024. These are legitimate concerns, and I really like where your head's at on that.
Cool, man. Well, Jeremiah, that's our first show done, and I know we're going to have another segment next week that we're going to try and fit in, but why don't you take our viewers home and let us go for the night?
In the great words of Lloyd Christmas from Dumb and Dumber, according to the map, we've only gone 4 inches. So we have so much more to give you all through the off season. Then our show is going to evolve and grow in season. We have a lot of big plans here at Player Profiler and for Player Profiler News Primetime. All All right, I've been Jeremiah Retzlaff. You can find me on X at Coach Retzlaff1. And then this has been Mike Lindberg. You can find him at FF Canuck 99. We will see you next week. Peace.
Peace out, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.